All right. I want to thank everyone for being here. I am very pleasantly surprised at the attendance. Uh, this is David Barron. I am a hypnotist, and I every every Friday I hold this little discussion here. And what we're going to talk about now is, let me make sure I have my notes with me. There we go. All right. So what I want to talk about now is I had the wonderful opportunity to talk with Toby Marshall, who was gracious enough to be here and give me permission to talk about this. Toby, for a decade or so, was part of the Rajneesh Puram spiritual movement. You might remember it from the Netflix series Wild Wild Country. And if you've ever lived in Oregon, you certainly remember it. It sort of has a legacy back there. But in the discussion I had with him, we talked for about 2 hours, uh, really just describing his experience in that. And what I got was some of the techniques that were used by Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh, also known as Osho, to sort of build his cult and manipulate people. At the end, Toby, you're absolutely welcome to raise your hand and interject if you need to during this. But at the end here, I'll sort of leave questions opening for everybody. So to just recap Toby's experience, he he went from being an actor in a sort of a progressive uh, movement, and really to find his place, he's got connected with the Rajneesh movement. And what I want to describe here is what I want to describe here are the 10 steps. I call them steps, but they're not in a progression. They're sort of permeated throughout of it. Some of these happen one before another, but 10 steps that were used in the Osho movement and by Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh to recruit and manipulate and exploit the people who were part of the movement. The very first step is always target acquisition. Yeah, find the right people. And the best people in just about any cults are those who are most vulnerable. This certainly applied to Toby. Uh, they identify people that question mainstream society. They feel some sense of dissatisfaction, searching for a deeper meaning in life, sometimes often in a transitional state, recent divorce, loss of a job, some sort of existential doubt. And that's the first part. The second part is to really provide and offer a valid and alluring spiritual philosophy. And so present something sophisticated and inspiring teaching that is critical of some parts of the mainstream society. This provides some intellectual and spiritual legitimacy. One of the things that Rajneesh did is he taught some of his higher ups how to influence people. Let me let a few extra people in here. Here we go. All right. There we go. And he taught them how to influence people. And again, this is a quote. Uh, he said, everybody has a price. And all you have to do is find out what that is, and they will do anything for you. Some people, it's social approval. For some people, it's having sex. For other people, it's feeling in control. And he made a point of telling those people who are recruiting that people are going to sell themselves for much less than they think they normally would. And in that process, he had an intelligence network, so to speak, of people who, when someone new was brought in to the organization, they would already be taking notes. They would sort of talk about the person's vulnerabilities, their fears, their wants, their desires. And in the moments, if they were ever presented before Rajneesh, it was as though it was a psychic reading, but actually he more than likely was just referring to the notes that were given him. So understanding that, it makes him more vulnerable. Now, he also had this ability of what we talk about called composure. This is something that Chase Hughes is very talks about a lot. It's the ability to be completely and totally self-contained, not responding to anything in the external environments, just making choices when it's necessary to respond to situations. And so regardless of what happened around him, he would always have this incredible sense of composure and this feeling of calm. Now, the other step is you start to demolish existing frameworks and create this sense of disorientation. The process is physically removing them from the external environment, from all those things that are familiar. What this does is it creates sort of a culture shock. It creates a sort of a chaotic setting so that people become much more vulnerable to new information. Now, if you can go from one really bad chaotic situation to something very warm and welcoming, this is what cults do. It's called love bombing. So Toby talked about when he arrived in India, it was overwhelmed by all the poverty and the death. But then once he entered into the ashram, it was like it was not like he was just home, but he was in the home that he always wanted to be in. And this happened with everybody who was a part of this. Again, bear with me. There we go. All right. Hang on just a second. All right. There we go. So a sense of physical isolation. Immediately, once they're in this new setting, and again, this happens with most cults, you provide comfort. You provide all necessary needs. If you imagine the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you provide their sense of security, you provide their sense of food and necessities, and from that, they don't feel you can start building from there, and there's no need to or want to go anywhere different. The next step here is, and this is specific toward Rajneesh, is take some very core concepts that have a spiritual foundation and to use them, but you also sort of twist them. The most common one I've heard from him and from other spiritual teachers is about how it's so important to destroy the ego. And I want to take that in context better. I think a good, let me see how I can describe this best. Most deep spiritual practices talk about, or spiritual philosophies and religion talk about, ultimately, you find there's no separation between you and the universe. And this is filled with the feeling of love. And the ego is the one thing that most often prevents that from happening. However, the ego has a purpose. The ego is there to keep you safe. Now, it's always good to sort of pause the ego in certain times, but taking this understanding, this spiritual truth, and turning it into destroying the ego, it means destroying your sense of self and your sense of identity, and redefining it into something as a greater sense of personal agency. And it stops all critical thought, and it gives all of your attention to the master, the guru, whoever is guiding you. And what it does is when you begin having this critical thought, it's framed as your ego getting in the way, and you need to stop it. You need to overcome. As this happens, what it does is it keeps someone constantly vigilant and on their toes. And one of the things Rajneesh would do is he would change people's jobs without any sort of forewarning. And if someone would object and say, no, my job's in the kitchen, he says, no, that's your ego. Your job is now to change bed sheets or to clean the toilet or to wash the showers. That's your job. And if any resistance was brought up, it was thought of as or framed as a barrier to enlightenment. Along this, again, another step is it showcased the respective individuals. Another step would to bring in people of much authority who are part of the organization. These could be therapists, these could be artists, these could be intellectuals. And what that does, it provides a social context where this is true. A lot of cults do that. Think of Scientology, once they very specifically went after Hollywood stars so that they could say, well, if Tom Hanks is a Scientologist and he does great, that's just social validation. The next step here is about, I call it create a performance of absolute authority. So the leader has this incredible sense of control. He has this hyper-controlled persona where every movement, every speech, every part of his demeanor simply appears so in composure, it's almost superhuman. And just imagine if you were to see someone like that, who is, regardless of the situations, regardless of the surroundings, is so totally calm and composed, it creates a sense of awe. And, we've spoken about, Chase Hughes talks about the pendulum going from posturing, where you're putting on an impression, to shrinking, where you're sort of shrinking to not be vulnerable to other people. Right in the middle is this incredible sense of calm. And when you're around someone who has this presentation, it doesn't matter what side of this pendulum you feel comfortable and compelled to follow this person. So the next step is it was in offering something vague, but an exclusive path that's structured dependency. And so the process is to promise enlightenment as a tangible goal, but also keep it undefined. So, you can talk about it as this ocean, but you never have a real measurement of when you're dipping your toes in there. You're getting close, and maybe your toes feel wet, but you don't ever really know that you're there. And what that does is it keeps you searching and searching for more. The next step is called Toby called it the poisoning of the milk. There's always some really sweet and wonderful spiritual experiences that one can have in any spiritual practice, but these can be used to twist and manipulate and abuse. And that's the poison that's in the milk. And sometimes the sweetness of the milk, for people who've never tasted milk before, they don't even know there's poison in it. And so what it does, it can make someone endlessly vulnerable to just wanting to go back. there are people, even in all sorts of cults and organizations, even though the leader's been exposed and it's been crumbled, they still follow that same path, just to have a taste of that milk. And the last thing is, and this happens in many cults, is to foster an us them mentality. This creates a self-imposed isolation. So, and I've experienced this in my experience in the past when I was in a self-improvement group where my family didn't understand. How could I explain it to them? And so it created a me versus them mentality. And once you have that perfectly installed, what happens is they will even tell you how to respond to criticism beforehand. And so if someone brings up a fact, it's already been dealt with. Like, for example, if they're going to bring up the cult leader has sexual dalliances with all sorts of people, the cult will say, this is what other people are going to say. You know this now. This is what you need to understand. So you've already inoculated yourself against any other sort of arguments to leave. So those are the 10 things I learned from Toby's conversation with me. Now, what I did in this conversation, and I'm going to let Toby talk here in a few moments. What I did with this conversation is we recorded a 2-hour interview. I have it. Toby is writing a book tentatively. It's called Guru Gone Bad. Great title, I think. And when he gives me the go ahead, I'm going to release it probably to help promote his book. It's still in writing. Toby, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and introduce yourself and say hi. And for either one of us, open yourself up to questions. We can go from there.
There we go. Okay, I'm unmuted. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, welcome.
2 quick things. Thank you. 2 quick things. I had a friend who suggested that Guru Gone Bad, although a very catchy title, it was too cheap. And so I understood what she meant. She said that the story is much more complex than that. So just as a quick note, I'm thinking now to call it Dark Mirror. No problem, but that's just where it goes. So yeah, I think you really encapsulated a lot of it very well as an overview of how it worked. I can't remember. I had a couple of notes in my head, but if I remember them, I'll tell you. But one thing that I wanted to say is that it's very easy to say, so look, that these are the techniques this guy used, but he was, and everyone I've spoken to, and people who were very close to him as well, did characterize him as an extremely powerful psychic. This was a man who had abilities that were far beyond normal in terms of his ability to speak. He could speak extemporaneously, beautifully for hours. He could go deeply into things. He clearly was able, at least in my estimation, to connect to something that allowed him that gave him an energy. He did have a channel, let me say. But as I also mentioned to David before, Ken Wilber once said, there's wake up, grow up, and clean up, and they're not the same thing. So while he had a very strong esoteric connection to something that felt like truth, it was to some extent shallow because it didn't include compassion, which I believe is maybe the sine qua non of real connection, because I believe that love is the primary thing. So he also could mimic love very well as speaking deeply about things. He talked about love, and the things he said about love, just reading them, and I think this is why he's now so popular, now that they've kind of cleaned up all of his discourses and put them in popularized books. You read these things and you say, this guy he's really got insight. This is true. This this is stuff that needs to be said. But what you don't know is what's behind it. And the another thing about cults is that they have to keep the leader's private behavior extremely behind everything. You can't even get an inkling that maybe that you're that there's something wrong here. He used to sexually abuse female disciples, and every one of them was, at first he characterized as, I'm adjusting their energy, I'm teaching secret tantric techniques, but they were told to never mention it to anyone, not even their most intimate partners. And this was a way, and only lately, as these women start talking to each other, he said that to you, said that to me too. And all of a sudden it becomes more obvious what the thing was. But as long as you feel like this is some special esoteric thing that's been given to you alone, and you have to guard it, that this is something precious, that saying it would cheapen it, that it's something that has to stay inside of you and grow. This is the perfect way to keep people from talking, because as soon as people talk and the horizontal connection comes into play, all of a sudden you say, wait a minute. But as long as you can have the connection is always just this vertical connection to the leader, then you can be having sex with everybody, but you don't have any real vertical relationship, because you can't really discuss anything other than saying how wonderful it all is. One thing that's really important, I think, and something that really attracted me and kept me there, is the sense of community. When you have a bunch of people who are all pointed in the same direction, and especially if there's a social situation in which a social setup in which people don't have to compete with each other. It's like, you will get exactly what you need. You don't have to fight with him for what he gets. And if he gets something that you feel you should be getting, that's only that's only your ego. Everybody gets exactly what they need. One of the things he said, which was very hilarious, was that it used to be a great privilege to sit near him during these discourses. And so a lot of the people who were sitting way in the back and saw always the same people sitting in the front, who were the people who worked for him or the people who gave a lot of money. Somebody said, why do always the same people get to sit in front? And he said, but you don't understand. The people who sit in front, they're thick. They need to be nearer to me. You get the message from the back. So he tried to equalize everything in the way that people didn't feel any dissatisfaction. So he was extremely clever. He was Machiavellian to a level that just, as I learned about it, it just was mind blowing. As David mentioned, he said everybody has a price. But he told his lieutenants, he said, let me explain to you how to lie effectively. What you have to do is, if somebody accuses you of something, you say, no, you didn't do it. But then you add silently in your mind another phrase that would make it true. So if you stole somebody's chocolate and they came up to you and said, you stole my chocolate, you could say, oh, you stole my chocolate. And you say, no, I didn't steal your chocolate. And then in your mind, you say, last Tuesday. So you didn't steal their chocolate last Tuesday. So that's a true statement. And he told them that employed correctly, this could even defeat lie detector tests if you could really embody it completely. And there's so much that he told them, that, for instance, that if you want to, and also when you lie to somebody, never look them in the eye, focus on their forehead, so that you're not looking them in the eye, because that's, of course, that's a very direct and true communication. So if you look at around their forehead, it looks to them that you're looking in their eye, but you don't have that connection. So he had all these techniques that he used to help his people. I mean, we didn't hear that. This was heard by the people who were working for him and who he had to train. But once I heard this from somebody who had been the number two and had escaped, it was quite chilling, I have to say,
Wow.
because he managed to embody this incredible feeling. And as David said, if you can be completely self-contained, it's a powerful, powerful feeling for you to feel that. Because what I felt is I was always, anxious about this and worried about that, and how is this going to work? And oh my God, my life, this and that, all these anxieties that I think we have. And all of a sudden, you come into the presence of this guy who sits there like a Buddha, and he feels no compunction to react to anyone. He's completely self-contained. And all of a sudden, you kind of put yourself into that place, and all of a sudden, you feel what it would be like if you were that self-contained. And in that moment, you can kind of all of the anxieties, all of the fears recede, and you feel yourself. And then if he starts telling you, this is how enlightenment feels, and I will help you, but you have to surrender totally to me. So this is the kind of thing he used. And the other thing that David didn't mention exactly, hinted at it, was that Rajneesh created this incredible double bind where he said, you have to surrender to me. And because I am past my ego, your ego will fight you because your ego doesn't want to die. So your ego will always resist the true move toward enlightenment, because that meant the death of the ego. So the more you doubt, the more you have to trust, the more you're getting close, the more you're nearly my wife, who was this powerful woman who was supposed to run the commune with Sheila. At the end, she went to him after she had learned all this, and she saw that it was, I mean, for her, it was terrible. I wasn't there. I was there for 5 years, not a decade. But
Okay.
my wife was there for a decade and was at the top of the pyramid. And when she started to understand how this was really happening, she decided she had to leave. And she went to him and she said, I couldn't look him in the eye because I knew that if I looked him in the eye, he is so powerful that I wouldn't be able to say what I had to say. So she kept her gaze down, and he told her, look at me, Deeksha, look at me. She said, no, no, Bhagwan, I really feel I have to go, I need a break. I need a break. And he said, you don't need a break. You need a breakthrough. Don't you understand that this is the last step for you? This is the last hurdle. So this is he really had his thing down.
Yeah.
Uh, I
You,
don't
you,
know if anybody. Yeah, go ahead.
well, you, I think you said Ken Wilber had that phrase.
Right.
What was it? First you wake up.
He said there's wake up, grow up, and clean up, and they're not the same things.
Right. Cleanup is the hardest part.
Yes.
And when you actually meet somebody who has their sense of composure, you
Mm,
know they make their bed. You know they have good
yeah.
relationships. That's the cleanup. And
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
he was able to fake that well enough that it elicited this followership in you and in so many other people.
And can I say one more thing, which is that because I studied acting for a long time, and I know the techniques that if you can make sure that people never see you off stage, you can be the biggest bastard in the world and do stuff behind people's backs as long as they won't talk about it, as long as you can make sure they don't say anything. But then in the front, you come out and there you're on stage and it all is perfect. And so for me, from the very beginning, because I had these doubts and I knew how stagecraft works, I really wanted to know if this was an act. Was it all an act? And I've come to the conclusion that it wasn't all an act, but that he used a particularly powerful talent that he had to turn it into a very powerful act. And what I want to say is that what's really important is if somebody like this, it's the same thing with actors, it's the same thing with presidents, it's the same with clearly with Trump. and all of these people is you've got to manage the image. So you have to become sensitive, am I being fed an image, or do I really know this person? This what was so important to me, to try to meet him privately a couple of times, was to see how he acted when he wasn't on stage. And what I saw was clearly that it was an act, but he
Yeah.
was very good at it. And his people made sure, like Pam Bondi is doing now, or Christy Noam, or all of these people, they make sure that they support it, and they're his willing accomplices. So it's very important to see who's promoting him, how they're promoting him, and what do you really know about him or her.
Yeah. I think everyone knows this, but it's always worth repeating. If it's too good to be true, it
It
probably
is.
is.
Yeah.
It's always the
Yeah.
first thing you have to ask yourself. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I want to open this up. Does anyone have any questions either for me or for Toby? Go ahead and raise your hand. Graham, there you go.
Yeah, it's a question for Toby,
Yeah.
and it's more aimed at how they did their recruiting using a bit of an analogy, where they like a funnel web spider that just waited for somebody who was hapless enough to come past, and then they'd reach out and grab them, or whether like an active predator that actually go out looking for their prey, and then when they found one, they'd run it down.
I think it's a little of both. One of the things that my wife said in the very early days when he was just starting his thing, he would say to the people who he had enticed already, he would say, "Go out and bring my people. My people are waiting for me. Start a center, bring people." So what they would do, it was a lot of advertising, and it was, of course, he wanted famous people there because this was incredibly good advertising. Uh, it wasn't like the Hare Krishnas where they stood on the corner, or called you in to take a personality test like they did in Scientology. I think it was more relying on word of mouth. That's how it hit me. I had friends who I respected who all of a sudden had found out, and they had gone and they came saying how great it was, and you should go see it. You have to see it. And finally, for me, I was reticent, but I said, well, let me go check it. I don't have anything happening right now. But it wasn't a kind of an active predation where they stood on street corners and said, "Hey, come here, I have something to show you." I think it was, and I think that's also why he managed to attract, um, I don't want to say higher quality people, but people who were more educated and more intelligent, because they were recruited by other intelligent people who he had managed to get in. And then he made sure that these people went out and tell your friends, And of course, we always had to wear the mala and the colors. So this was another thing. So this was a passive advertisement, but it was another way of, hey, well, who is that guy? Oh no, you don't know my guru. It's wonderful. So it was a way of pulling people in visually.
All right, good. Nikolai, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, so question for Toby.
Yeah.
Kind of curious about this one. You leaving the cult, was that more of a progressive decision made over time, or was there a specific event that made you decide on that course of action?
I I had never fit in. I had no idea how I was going to fit into the normal society. I didn't have a particular, I hadn't decided. I think when I was 13 years old in school, they said, "You boys, now you have to decide what you want to do with your life and pursue that course." And I was
Hmm.
like, "I don't know. I'm 13 years old. I don't know what I want to do." So I was searching, and I went to University of California at Berkeley with a scholarship because I had graduated valedictorian in my class. And my mother was an MD, so I thought, well, maybe I should be a doctor. So I went into pre-med, and then I just realized, oh my God, this is not what I want to do. So then I was kind of lost. I mean, what do I want to do? So I went to Berkeley, and 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 I went to Berkel I was looking for, luckily and unluckily, my parents didn't push me. You have to follow your father, or you have to do this. So they kind of left it open for me. So I was searching. I didn't know what to do. I ended up, because then I decided to study drama, and I got a degree in drama. But then I realized that acting is a tough business, and I didn't see myself really going into Hollywood. I didn't quite know where I was going to go, and I by chance got invited to meet the Living Theater, and they invited me to join them. And the Living Theater was a theater collective, quite famous in the 60s and 70s. And because I was fairly politically active, I thought, this is great. I mean, we try to make a difference. And that itself was a commune in a way. That was a collective. We were 25, 30 people. So already I was kind of conditioned out of the idea of just having a little family and, being in a neighborhood. So when that kind of came to the end, and I realized this is a dead end, how am I going to continue? What can I do? I mean, the Living Theater was an incredible experience, but I realized that it's kind of futile to call for political change. After a while, it's like the same old thing. So I said, no, there must be, I think I have to change the inside first to change the outside, because just trying to change the outside while still being completely stuck in the old patterns is not going to make any change. And this is when I actually became kind of, let me say it, vulnerable. So I had friends from the Italian political left who had gone into Rajneesh, and I said, "Wow, maybe they found something." At that point, some friends said, "We're going to India to meet this guy in his commune." And when I got there, and as David said, there's this feeling of you come off the horror of India, the streets of India, to this beautiful commune where everybody is like angelic, and you kind of wonder, they're worshiping this guy, but okay, oh, what he's saying, maybe it makes sense. Maybe I have resistances. I know about resistances in therapy, so maybe I have to try this. The other thing that's important to say is that he was legitimized in a way, because he had for a while, the founder of Esalen, which at the time was, well known for humanistic psychology. He had a lot of therapists who were doing, I would say, credible therapy, who had come and they were doing it in the ashram. So my thing was, hey, listen, I guess I can, at least I can kind of do group therapy here, something I need. But the group therapies always led toward Bhagwan. They would always, at the climax, wheel out this huge picture of him and put it in front of everybody and say, meditate on him. This is the master, blah, blah, blah. So there were all these ways of bringing them in. And for me, communal living, just to answer your question, I think communal living is ultimately, if we were a little more adjusted, it's a much richer way of living, because you're much more connected with other people. And this was a huge draw, I think, for everybody, is the feeling of hey, I can trust all these people. I can just kind of meld. It's like a warm bath, and everybody can just trust each other, and we don't have to worry, and we're not going to get ripped off, and nobody's going to do this and nobody's going to do that. So this was also. Can you wait a minute? I have somebody, a guest who's arriving. Go ahead, David, and talk for a minute. I'll be right back.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Alex,
Okay.
you had a question. We'll pose that to him.
I come in. It's the first floor.
I'll just
I'll go get him.
briefly say it before
Okay.
Toby and his guests come in. But I've been showing a whole bunch of these acronyms on the chat. I was talking about MICE. I think the CIA have changed it now to RICE, which is reward, ideology, coercion, ego. The C can mean a lot of things, but in cults, it can also mean conditioning and conversion rather than just compromise or coercion, basically. So C can stand for a lot of things, but the rest of it, reward, ideology, and ego, it's pretty much standard. And it sounds as though cult conditioning sounds an awful lot like how the CIA recruits an individual asset. They take somebody who has connections with the power structure that they want to infiltrate to get the intel that they want, and then they set this person up with love bombing, frankly, to turn that person into someone who's working for them instead of to the power structure. And here am I showing off my Bond supervillain flag, aren't I?
Well, to add to that, with regard to CIA recruitment, they don't just get an asset and bond friendly with them, but then they find out their weaknesses. Maybe their son needs chemotherapy. Maybe,
Nikolai,
yeah,
Nikolai, Law 33. Law 33 of one of your favorite books on the back shelf. Robert Greene, The 48 Laws of Power. Law 33 is discover each man's thumb screw.
That's right.
I'm sure you agree with me, Nikolai.
I'm familiar with it myself. All right. So, Toby, you can go ahead and unmute. Yeah, the comment was from Alex about it's very similar how CIA recruits.
I heard most of it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And I think one thing that's important here with the CIA and with Rajneesh is that these are people trained to pick up on cues from people. And you mentioned, this was the other thing that I remember that I wanted to say, that he did have some notes from his people about because everyone who went in there, they had an interview. If they wanted to take sannyas, they would talk to one of the women who kind of were in league with Rajneesh, and they would write things down, and then they would say he did this, he was an actor, he just came from Rome, he studied this, whatever. But Rajneesh also had an amazing ability to really read a person, to see them and to see everything about them. And I think that he would probe, he would say a phrase, for instance, and he would see how they reacted. And then he could very quickly see how they operated in a way. And so then he could connect to his source in a way and very eloquently bring something like a good psychic who's doing tarot cards can do. It doesn't really matter what the cards are. If they can feel you and they can kind of make a connection through the cards give them something to talk about. But they have a kind of a psychic, let's call it a psychic sense of your unconscious communication. And I think what's really important to me was to realize that this was based to a great extent, in my estimation, on the fact that he didn't give a fuck about anybody else. Nobody touched him. He could sit there behind his wall and probe and look, and nothing knocked him because he didn't have any connection with anybody. There's this great quote that I found in the book where he talks about, like Gurdjieff said, don't consider others. He said, if you start considering others, you're going to get confused. You just stick with yourself and don't give a damn about anybody else. And that's a huge power. And I think that's why narcissists have so much power, because they don't have to consider anybody else.
Yeah. Once you sort of have this quality of internal quiet, this sense of composure,
yeah,
I think it opens up your awareness when you look at somebody and you realize, oh, this is entirely a person who has fears and wants and needs and vulnerabilities. And all I have to do is just look at them long enough and they will subconsciously sort of tell me what it is.
Yes. Oh, and the other thing, of course, is as soon as you posit yourself as this great authority and you're going to be able to help them, that they're completely benevolent and they're just there to help you, you open up to them. You don't have any more defenses. You finally feel that you've found the unconscious, or the unconditional love, and you tell them and this and there's that, and everything is open to them. You lay it all out on the table, and this is, to me, this is the most despicable thing.
Yeah,
is that he just destroyed people's innocent trust. So that's unfortunately the thing that happens.
Again, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Okay. All right. Toby, thank you so much, first of all, for talking with me. We'll get that interview out when you give me the go ahead.
Yeah, you can. The only thing to do is maybe not mention, or it doesn't matter if you mention the name of the book because that's going to change.
Yeah.
I'm happy if you want to go ahead and put it out. And the other thing is that you and I, let's get together again and we can talk more in depth about the ranch years, which we never really had a chance to do.
Another 2 hours
If
of
you'd
great
like.
information. I'd love it. Yeah, absolutely.
If you want it, we'll do it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No, I mean,
Go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say my whole point here is to get this information out as I understand it, because I see too much of the same thing happening everywhere. And I know that if I had read my book before I went, I never would have gone. So what I'm hoping is that if other people read it, when they get in similar situations, maybe something will, oh, wait, maybe, I have to look at this. So I'm not in it for anything other than that. So I'm happy to share whatever information I have.
That's wonderful. All right. Toby, thank you. Everyone else, thanks for the questions, the participation, the attention. My tagline, of course, is because you're here, you're not somewhere else. And so you sacrificed to be here. I want to tell you how much I appreciate the sacrifice you made to be here. We will get back again next week. So talk soon. Please take care.
And thank you, David, and thank you, Toby, for joining us. That was really informative.
Thank you.
Look forward to your book coming out.
Hopefully soon.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby and David.